Here. Dr. Adams, would you like to explain the purpose of this evening's meeting, please?
Thank you. Tonight, we will adopt the tentative millage rates and then adopt the tentative budget for 2013-14 school year after receiving public input. Truth and millage trim advertisements have been placed according to the specifications of law. Trim requires that proposed taxes, also referred to as millage rates, be the first issue we discuss and adopt at this public hearing. The board will make two separate motions before completing their task. The first one will set all tentative millage rates. The second motion will adopt the tentative budget. Major issues on taxes will be reviewed, followed by input from the public prior to the board's motions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adams. Mr. Morrison, as by custom, we would ask that you would please discuss the millage rates. I believe that you do have an overhead for us and that there were some handouts that were available.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome to everyone this afternoon, those in attendance, and I believe this is being recorded as well. Before we get started, just wanted to run through the board a couple of handouts this afternoon that you should have available in front of you. For those who may have not brought their budget books with them, I do have extra copies because I will be making reference on occasion to the budget books. In addition, before you, you should have two resolutions. Resolution 2014-01, which is a resolution to adopt the tentative millage rates, as well as resolution number 2014-02, which will adopt the tentative budget. In addition, you should also have in front of you a memorandum from the Florida Department of Education dated July 16, 2013, which is the certification of the 2013-14 school district millage rates and prior period funding adjustment millage. And then there's another separate one with the actual millages that are on there. These materials should be available on our website as well, as is customary, for the public to view this information. So the first order of business, TRIM requires that we discuss and adopt the millage rates prior to the budget. As you will see on the overhead there, in 2012-13, on September 12 of last year, the school board adopted a millage rate of 8.313 mils, which is comprised of the required local effort, local discretionary, critical operating needs of 0.25, debt service millage, which is no longer in effect for 2013-14. Special millage referendum was not in effect last year, and capital outlay millage of 1.5. The current proposed millage is 8.116 mils, whereas the required local effort is 5.268, which is delineated on your Florida Department of Education memorandum. Just a note here, as is customary, we remind the public that the school board does not calculate the millage rates. Those are calculated by the legislature through the Florida Department of Education, which are sent to us. So there you will see a 5.268 millage for the required local effort, 0.748 of local discretionary, which is no change in the local discretionary. The critical operating needs millage, as I mentioned, has expired in the statute, so that's a 100% decrease or a 0.25 loss. Debt service of 0.39. For 2013-14, that is zero, as the final payment has been made on the general obligation bonds that constructed Sebastian River High School and also the Oslo Middle School. In addition, this year, by voter referendum, and the prior year in August of 2012, we have a special millage referendum that was voted in at a 0.6 millage. In your documents that you have before you, board, and what was advertised in the public, the Department of Revenue TRIM manual requires that we refer to this as additional voted millage. However, on my overhead slide, for purposes of clarity and for the public, this is the special millage referendum that was voted last year. And then last but not least, we have our capital outlay millage of 1.5 mils for a total proposed millage of 8.116 mils, a 0.197 decrease or 2.34% decrease in the millage going forward for 2013-14. As defined by the Department of Revenue and the prescriptive calculations that are contained in the TRIM manual, according to Florida Statutes 200, we have to calculate and compare the rollback rate, which is the rate that would have been in effect to raise the same amount of money that we had last year. The required local effort is less than the rollback rate by 0.1180. This year, the proposed millage is 5.2680, whereas the rollback rate is 5.3860. Local discretionary of 0.748. Rollback is 0.7430, or a 0.67% increase. The critical needs millage, when rolled back to a prior year compared to the 0.25, is greater by 0.3520. Capital outlay millage of 1.5 is greater than the rollback rate by 0.110. So for a total, when compared to the rollback rate, of 0.25. Hence, the advertisement that the public would have seen over the weekend was for a notice of property tax increase based on the formula that is contained within the TRIM manual and the calculations. If your proposed millage is higher than your rollback rate, then you have to advertise a notice of property tax increase. In this instance, the proposed millage is higher by 3.17% of the rollback rate, and the rollback rate calculation excludes debt service, as you may notice on the slide. This next scenario here is where I think it is important to stress to the public with respect to what is the impact of the proposed millage by the school district on your actual tax bill. As I mentioned, over the weekend, as approved by the board, we advertised the notice of tax increase plus the budget summary and the capital outlay ad. This information I'm about to present, you could follow on page 11 of your budget books, whereby, and we do an example on an annual basis. We look at a house that is assessed the valuation of about $200,000 by the local property appraiser. Based on the millage that was levied last year, in 12-13 you would have paid $1,454.78, which is based on a $200,000 home, less your homestead exemption of $25,000 for a taxable basis of $175,000. Based on the millage that we are proposed to be levied in 13-14, your taxes, if the assessed valuation of your home did not change, which I will get into a moment what the property appraiser is reporting, you would have paid $34.47 less, or 2.362% less in taxes than what you paid last year. However, the property appraiser is reporting that there's a stabilization in tax rolls and property values in Indian River County as far with respect to the school districts, and reported a 1.4% increase in assessed valuations. This has been certified by the Department of Revenue as well as the Florida Department of Education. Based on a 1.4% increase in your assessed valuation from $200,000 to $202,800, less your homestead exemption, the taxable value of your home is now $177,800. Based on the proposed millage levy, you will be paying approximately $1,443.02, or $11.75 less in taxes than what you paid last year, or a 0.81% decrease in your taxes. Madam Chair, at this time, this concludes the presentation of the proposed tentative millage rates for 2013-14. It would be appropriate to sound the halls for any public input on the tentative millage rates.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. Let me clarify for the public that is here and the public who may be able to view this, that there are 3 board members physically present. That is what we need to be able to vote on an issue. With the resignation of Mr. Pegler, we only have 4 active board members. Our 4th board member, Mr. Matt McCain, is with us by phone. Mr. McCain, we appreciate you being with us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that being said, at this time, I would like to close our meeting and open our public hearing on the millage rates. This item deals with the tentative budget millage rates for the 2013-14 school year. Dr. Adams, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Yes.
Have you received any written responses to the advertised public hearing?
No.
The public is now invited to address this issue at this time. If you please would come forward one at a time. Is there an individual representing an organization or a group who would like to express an opinion on our budget or ask questions? Is there anyone who has their own personal or public interest who wishes to speak at this time? Hearing none, the chair concludes that the announced public hearing has been conducted pursuant to notice and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. Board members, we need a motion to approve the resolution 2014-01 adopting the tentative millage rates as advertised for 8.116 mills, representing our required local effort, basic discretionary, additional voted millage, and capital outlay. May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve Resolution Number 2014-01, adopting the tentative millage rates as advertised for 8.116 mills, representing required local effort, basic discretionary, additional voted millage, and capital outlay.
Thank you very much. I think being said twice, everybody understands that. May I have a second, please? Second. Motion by Ms. Disney and a second by Ms. Jimenez. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the millage?
Madam
Yes, please.
Chair, I think it bears repeating that our adopted millage rate last year was 8.313, and the proposed millage rate this year is 8.116. The reason that we had to advertise for an increase in the rollback rate was because of the formula for establishing that rate. And it may be confusing to the public why we advertised an increased tax rate when we're actually having a lower millage rate. So I would want to assure the public that we're open for that explanation at any time. If they call the school district office, they can speak to someone who can fully explain it and make sure that there's no misunderstanding that it is not a tax increase, but is reported as such because of the formula.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Jimenez.
Yes, and I'd also like to just once again thank the community for the approval of the special millage referendum. We will be using those funds again this year, and I'm sure that we will be publicizing how they were used to make sure that we are adhering to our commitment to use these for the technology and other positions that were advertised.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Stang, would you please do a roll call vote, including Mr. McCain?
Mr. McCain.
Yes.
Mrs. Disney Brownback.
Yes.
Ms. Jimenez.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
It's unanimous in favor of the motion.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Morrison, if you would, I believe you have some additional information to share with us at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item, as required by law to be adopted, is the proposed tentative budget for fiscal year 2013-14. In 2012-13, in September of last year, the school board adopted a fiscal year budget of $274,841,113. The general fund proposed tentative budget for 2013-14 stands at $156,197,628. which is an increase of $12,674,340. That can be found on a range of page 10 through page 109 of your budget books. The general fund this year prioritizes the distribution of approximately $3.1 million in funds that have been reserved and categorized by the state of Florida for teacher salary increases. As we go forward through the fiscal year, we will have to negotiate that with our teachers union, but that is reserved in the budget. In addition to that, reserved in the budget are also a proposal by the school board to increase teacher salaries throughout the schedule for those at the bottom and those at the top. Those are the lion's share of the general operating fund budget, as well as the Florida retirement system rates have been increased for fiscal year 2013-14, so the impact is shown within the budget. The next fund that has been advertised is the debt service fund. The debt service fund stands at $17,478,491, which is a reduction of $3,220,433. With the final payment on the general obligation bonds for Sebastian River High School as well as for Oslo Middle School, we no longer levy a 0.39 mils as we did in the prior year. So the revenues to the fund have gone down in that respect. The capital projects fund stands at $54,676,267, which is a reduction of $8,751,172 due to the ongoing construction projects. We are literally touching each school over the summer this year. And also the capital projects funds has a priority of the enhancement of safety and security at our schools. There are projects delineated in the budget for that. Special revenue and food services stands at $10,477,288, which is a reduction of $193,758, or a 1.82% decline. The food service budget this year contains a slight increase for meal lunch prices, which will take effect into the new fiscal year. Special revenue, these are federal funds that are granted to the school district on an entitlement basis, some on a competitive basis, stands at $15,102,882, which is an increase of $2,589,251. The lion's share are spread between the three most prominent title grants that we have, such as Title II, an increase of about $292,000 due to roll forward of unspent dollars, IDEA, which is for exceptional student education, and Title I dollars of approximately $1.6 million. The Internal Service Fund stands at $21,826,464. This is the fund that contains our medical insurance premiums and revenues, which has a reduction of $886,358. This can be found on page 132 of your budget books. This is approximately rounded $1 million decrease due to the decline in our fund balance because of ever-increasing medical insurance costs. The Enterprise Fund, which is our extended day after-school program, stands at $1,229,984, which is a reduction of $63,979. It can be found on page 134 of your budget books. This is just due to less revenue coming into the fund due to less participation in the program. So for 2013-14, School District of Indian River County proposed tentative budget stands at $276,989,004, which is an increase of $2,147,891, or a 0.78% increase. Madam Chair, at this time, this concludes the presentation of information regarding the 2013-14 proposed tentative budget, and at this time, it would be appropriate to sound the halls for any public input on the tentative budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. Appreciate that very much. This item, as stated, deals with the budget for the 2013-2014 school year. Dr. Adams, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with our state statutes?
Yes.
At this time, we would like to recess the meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public is now in session. Dr. Adams, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
No.
The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Anyone who wishes to speak, please come forward to the microphone. Just state your name.
Joan Johnson, and I just have a question on the medical. You know, in other organizations, we're dealing with the increases in medical expenses due to the Affordable Care Act, and is there any impact of that on the school district?
Good question, Mr. Morrison.
At this time, it is not, the impact of the Affordable Care Act is not in the budget. I believe that certain sections of the Affordable Health Care Act have been delayed by the federal government. It is not reflected in our budget at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Yes, Mr. Marini. Oh, you still have to identify yourself, sorry.
Richard Marini.
Yes, sir.
Well, one quick question. I saw there was money earmarked for teacher salaries increase. Was there money earmarked for all school board employees in the budget?
Mr. Morrison.
I know you're in a negotiation, but I mean,
Yeah.
percent-wise, but was there money earmarked?
I'll
for
let
everybody?
Mr. Morrison answer that instead of answering it myself. Yes, Mr. Morrison.
Yes, there is a slight, there is money reserved in the budget for non-bargaining members that are not covered by a bargaining unit. It has been approximately 6 years since any members of the non-bargaining group have received any form of salary increases. So there is some money reserved for that.
And I would like to state that up until this past year, that the non-bargaining unit actually, they were the only group that actually took a reduction in salary and bargaining unit and did not. But we arbitrarily, because we could, we cut our non-bargaining unit, our non-bargaining employees. So I did answer it a little bit. Is there anyone else who has any input, questions? Is there an individual or an organization or a person representing their personal or a public interest who wishes to speak? Seeing none, the chair concludes that the announced public hearing has been conducted pursuant to notice and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. I'd like to call our meeting, reconvene our meeting at this time. Do I have a motion?
Yes. I move to approve Resolution 2014-02, adopting the tentative budget as advertised and presented at this hearing, and that we establish the final public hearing for 5:01 p.m. on Monday, September 9th, 2013.
Thank you, Ms. Disney. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. Discussion?
Yes, thank you. I think it's noteworthy that when you look at the increase of our budget, everything on the business side of the house, debt service, capital projects, enterprise fund, internal service, all of those items have gone down. And the things on the student side of the house, including teacher salaries, programming, and textbooks have gone up. And that is the school board being able to move in the right direction, one, because there is more money available, and two, because that's what we've made our priority.
Yes, Ms. Jimenez.
And I'd just like to mention, the budget book will be available online.
Already is.
It already is online. And one of the features that we have this year is that there is a breakdown by school and department, and it shows you not only the budget for each of those schools, but it shows you the staffing, and it shows you the student membership. So again, this is one of the ongoing issues in education about transparency. And this school district has children and achievement at heart. What we do is focused on children, and the information here shows you exactly where your taxpayer dollars go. And I'd also like to point out that on page 7 of the budget book, where you have the budget summary, when we look at the revenue side of where these dollars come from, it really is the the local tax dollars that are floating a lot of the expenses for education, because comparatively what we get from the federal government and what we get from the state does not compare with the amount of money that comes in. So it's really important for taxpayers to realize how much we value those dollars. And what you see in our schools is made possible through your hard-earned dollars. And I know that times are tough. I know that we're facing challenges with healthcare and so on, but your dollars go a long way to educating our students. And your school district is working very hard in order to accomplish this. So I encourage you to visit the website and look at the budget book. There are a lot of other statistics that would be of interest to many of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stang, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. McCain.
Yes.
Mrs. Disney Brombach.
Yes.
Ms. Jimenez.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous in favor of the motion.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. McCain, for being with us. We appreciate that.
No problem.
I'd like to
No
take this
problem. Thank
time
you.
on behalf of the board to thank Mr. Morrison and his staff. It's a huge, when you talk about this amount of money and this many programs and this many line items, it is an enormous task. And we know that you don't do it alone, even though, we sometimes think you can do that all by yourself. But we know that your staff certainly is to be commended for what they have done, and thank you personally, Mr. Morrison. You've done a yeoman's job with this. Closing comments, Dr. Adams or Mr.
Just
Morrison?
an additional appreciation to staff and Mr. Morrison, and adding some additional features and information to the budget booklet, I think is a great idea, and we appreciate that. It feels good to have a stable, healthy budget, and so we were able to add some things back to the schools this year, some additional student support specialists and teaching coaches. So that like I said, that's a good feeling to know that we're not in this same position that we have been for several years. So thank you to the taxpayers once more. Board members already said it, but for that referendum, that's part of the reason we have a stable budget, because of the support that we're getting from the community. So thank you.
Any other comments additional that you have, Mr. Morrison? Anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hearing nothing else to come before us, meeting adjourned.